Hi, I'm Moose, and at New York Comic Con, I had the privilege of sitting down with one of my all-time favorite voice actors, the one and only Phil LaMarr. From Static to Jon Stewart, Hermes Conrad to Samurai Jack, Phil has played some of the most hilarious and heroic characters across TV, film, and video games.
No, why couldn't you do those names in alphabetical order, man? That would have been much better.
I began by asking him about how he got his start in showbiz and why he made the switch to voice acting.
I did my first cartoon actually in high school.
Is it the Mr. T?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, which was just a weird one-off type of thing, and I never realized then or at any point that I would come back around to cartoons again. But weirdly enough, that's where my career started, and that's where the heart of it lives now. While we were doing Mad TV, we would do claymation pieces, and that's where I was really getting my mic time, you know. And then after Mad TV, I had a little more time, and I began to actively focus on doing more voice work, and it just started to click, you know. I started getting, you know, I got Weekenders, Futurama, you know, these things. And not only was I getting steady work, I was getting great shows with fantastic writers and producers and fellow actors. I mean, the first few shows I did, I was working with Gray Delisle, Jason Marsden, Kath Soucie, Billy West. It was the best way to start. It was like, oh, I see how to do it at an incredibly high level, and that's what I'm gonna aim for.
After finding his voice in minor roles, Phil's career took off after playing two of the most important superheroes of the modern era. In a time where black superheroes were nowhere near as visible as they are today, Phil helped bring to life two characters who paved the way for a new era of representation: Static and the Green Lantern, Jon Stewart.
Working with Dennis Cowan and Alan Burnett and Dwayne McDuffie on Static, all you knew is this was a great show. We were dealing with topics, but it wasn't the, you know, different strokes, very special episode kind of thing. It was just like, this is a day in your life. Some days are more heavier than others, and they were able to capture that feel in a Saturday morning cartoon, you know? And the fact that it was the only African-American superhero with his own show was a happenstance. I mean, it wasn't like anybody was trying to make that. And in fact, that one of the reasons the show didn't have a longer life was because of the hurdles that it faced. We didn't have any toys.
Yeah.
And of course, Saturday morning is not about ratings, it's not about quality, it was about toys.
Poetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that Static wasn't generating merchandising is the reason they canceled it.
Bro, if you think about these things too much, your head'll explode.
Well, and even with Justice League, again, diversity was not a buzzword. But Bruce Timm looked at the Justice League he was putting together and he was like, I don't want to see 7 white guys save the world every week. Because to him, from a creative standpoint, that's boring. It wasn't as exciting. It didn't give him as much, you know, story to tell. So again, it wasn't about politics, it was about quality, you know, excellence. Like, what is the best story we can tell? And also, I mean, I think the reason that Jon Stewart resonates with people is, again, because they took that character places that most legacy characters don't get to go. And the fact that he wasn't burdened by as many decades of continuity and whatnot, and also people's expectations.
In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light.
It's been years since Phil first stepped into these iconic roles, but like a lot of his animated peers, their performances have stuck with fans far more than any live-action actor. What is it about the voice actors that just make these characters so iconic and make them last so much and have such an impact on us?
I think it's twofold. It's one, people engage with animation at a different level than they do with, you know, on-camera stuff. And I'm not exactly sure why, but some of it is you come to it younger, you know, when you're in this impressionable stage, and you take it in just on a DNA level, and you carry it with you for the rest of your life. You know, there's also something about voices in particular.
Sweet Pyro of Cairo! That's true!
I remember the first episode of Scooby-Doo I ever did. You know, I was playing just some, you know, guest character, but when Casey Kasem walked into the studio, he got behind the mic, and they said, Casey, can you say a couple of lines as Shaggy? just so we can get a sound level, he began to speak.
I can already taste those chocolate-covered hot dogs.
And the hair on the back of my neck stood up. And I was transported back to when I was 8 years old with a bowl of cereal in front of the TV watching Scooby-Doo. There's something about a voice, the quality of it. Like when you hear your mom's voice. She doesn't sound the same now as she did when you were 4. She's aged, it's different. But there is something in there that your body, on a chemical level, responds to her sound, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I always feel like, as a voice actor, I'm really at most a third of the character, because without the art and without the writing, the characters are not whole, you know? And the fact is, Samurai Jack, Justice League, you know, Futurama, those shows in and of themselves are works of art. The writing, the design, all of that stuff comes together and impacts you as a viewer. It's like, this is amazing, you know?
Phil made his name in animation, but in 2001, he made his mainstream video game debut, portraying the twisted terrorist Vamp in Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. I asked Phil what it was like stepping into Hideo Kojima's extremely strange saga.
With Metal Gear, I had the benefit of having played, you know, Metal Gear 1 and loved it. You know, just like, oh, you remember trying to, it's like, oh, I'm just gonna shoot my way out. Nope. If you don't do the stealth, you're dead. And I loved it. And the cinematics were so amazing. It was unlike any game at the time. With what Kojima was doing in terms of storytelling in Metal Gear, you couldn't just have random people say the lines anymore. You know, like, oh, I'm gonna get you. You know, it wasn't that. It was so much more emotional and, you know, it was complex. So, I mean, I had the benefit of knowing how the game worked. So I could figure out, you know, oh, this is a line that I'm saying, you know, as an attack line. I shudder to think what some, you know, older actor who had never played a video game would have done in the booths, like, what am I saying? But Chris Zimmerman was the voice director, and she's a genius. So she was always able, I'm sure, to get performances out of people, like give them enough information to get, you know, to access whatever they needed to do emotionally.
In 2016, video game voice actors participated in a highly publicized strike for fair pay and better working conditions. Phil was a vocal supporter of the strike, so we talked about some of the unique challenges performers face in video games compared to cartoons.
The main two challenges are the work itself. There's so much of it, you know, and we talk about vocal stress, because again, most video games are violent and you have to do tons of death screams, but even without the death, to talk for 4 hours straight. I mean, you ever gone out with your buddies to a bar? Yeah. You know, you get there, let's say you get there at 8, by 11 o'clock, you've been talking over the music and everything, you go out to your car, how does your throat feel?
Not great.
You're like, yeah, gosh, I sound like this. That's just talking. You didn't actually have to be, you know, killed or electrocuted, you know, or cut in half with a chainsaw. Yeah. So there is a much greater amount of work, you know, physically that's required, plus also just culturally, because, you know, games come out of the tech world, and initially there wasn't really a lot of performance. It was programming with a little bit of, you know, voices or whatever sprinkled on top.
Remember, I'm the monkey and you're the cheese grater, so no messing around.
But now it's become so much more cinematic, and they have become the largest growing sector of entertainment. It is entertainment. This is not just, you know, programming. So a lot of the people involved in that world still don't get it. They don't get the fact that you've evolved. You're now an entertainment company, you know, and you're depending on artists, you know, for the work you create, and they're depending on you for their livelihood, you know. So, you know, a game sells $650 million, you know, worth of units or downloads in a weekend. Doesn't it make sense to share some of that with the people who helped you make it? And I'm not just talking about the actors, I'm talking about, you know, the programmers and stuff who slave for 20 hours during crunch time to get it done. But their culture is, no, only the people who own it get to benefit from the success, which is weird and dumb.
From video games to animation, voice actors are slowly starting to earn more respect, but there's still one area of entertainment where they're still not getting their due: big budget movies.
they think that, well, LeBron James makes hundreds of millions of dollars for the NBA and Nike, he'll make hundreds of millions of dollars for us, which doesn't make any sense at all. It's like, why would somebody who is a Cleveland Cavaliers fan suddenly want to go watch your animated feature just because LeBron's in it? It's like, no, I like him when he shoots jump shots. I don't care what he says. But part of it is these things are so insanely expensive that executives need to justify their costs. And so when you have a list full of celebrities, that makes it seem like a better bet. And there are certainly some on-camera people who are fantastic voice actors, who bring humor or, a persona. Like Chris Rock, you hire him, you get this voice, and you put that in a character, it suddenly just makes that character just a little bit funny. But then there are times when it's like, okay, dude, nobody is paying to hear Brad Pitt. Like, he's a great actor, but
how could I do anything else, my friend?
Phil's solidarity with his fellow performers is no surprise. Thanks to the unique nature of the biz, voice actors have formed a supportive, tight-knit community.
Because it really is a village. The way that the work is done, a lot of the time you're working with the exact same people week in and week out, sometimes day in and day out, and you run into each other at the studios. And it's always been that way. I mean, it was just that same group of people doing all the work, and that mentality has continued. It's very close-knit, and if there's a part that, somebody sends an audition to me and I'm like, that's not really my wheelhouse, but you know who would kill that? Rob Paulsen. I will recommend him, because there's not the competition that you find a lot in on-camera. Everybody feels like, one, there's enough work for everybody, and two, if it's not meant for you, you won't get it anyway. I find that it is, of all of the realms of entertainment I've worked in, probably the most merit-based. 95% of the time, if I don't get a job, when I hear the person who did, they're better than what I did.
Voice actors have never been more visible, and the future of animation looks brighter than ever, thanks to a new renaissance of talented creators dreaming up amazing stories and compelling characters.
More people are aware of that work, and there's also a nostalgia factor. Like a generation that grew up watching cable cartoons, those, 24/7, Nickelodeon, are now adults. And they have this huge sweet spot in their hearts for those cartoons, and now they know who those people are, and because of the internet, they have access to them, to us. It's like, I'm gonna follow Rob Paulsen on Twitter and tell him, I loved Pinky.
No!
People just feel a greater sense of connection to these things from their childhood, And the real twist has been in the last 7 years, I'd say, where it's not just nostalgia, but also current animation. Like the new Voltron on Netflix. There are people who are as deep in a fandom for that as there are people, who started watching Futurama 15 years ago. They care, and they, again, have access. So I think that's been the shift and the change. And for us, it's great because, we're performing alone in a dark room, to a microphone. So it's sort of delayed applause, for the performances.
Yeah, we're in the middle of a second renaissance, and it's interesting because it's not CG, it's not like over-the-top action or toyetic, mumbo jumbo where you have to sell vehicles and fortresses and stuff like that. It's just quality animation and amazing.
It's hitting people where, like what Rebecca Sugar is doing on Steven Universe, she could start a religion, because that show affects people like on the deepest level, and they love it, and that is just so wonderful to see. That she was given a chance by a major corporation, because a generation before, that would have been an independent thing that people were passing around tapes. So, hey, did you ever hear of this thing? But the fact that she's got a major platform to do something that authentic, you're right, that's what makes this time a really special time.
What's your secret? How'd you get so talented?
Don't focus so much on talent, Steven. A piece of art is a conversation. Every choice you make is a statement. Be true to yourself, and people will appreciate your honesty.
Phil LaMarr was one of the coolest people I've ever gotten to interview, and I want to thank him so much for taking the time to talk with us. He didn't even have anything specific to plug, but if you're interested in his future projects, you should check out Goblins Animated, a kickstarted D&D inspired animated series starring some of the most beloved and talented voice actors in the entire industry.